Yay!
And I'm gonna mute everyone.
Hello, all.
Is that started? Yes, we are live and recording. So welcome everybody. Today we are talking about multi-ball. Oh, Chris Murdoch's in the house. That's exciting. Thom and I normally do this, and he kind of has been leading for a little while, but I'm going to take over and do a bit of that. Thom, do you want to be co-host? Is that something you're on about? I'm going to make you co-host anyway. So yeah, coming in and out, we're going to show some videos and that kind of thing. Today is about palm spinning, specifically, rolling balls in the hands. But I did want to throw to, hey, Bish, yay, throw to some other types of contact juggling before we even just get into that. Some basic sort of, there is other types of multi-ball. This is Thierry and his multi-ball body rolling. I am going to reference Take You Later, obviously, but I just sort of wanted to put in some of the earlier sort of thoughts about multi-ball, different categories that we have. I've put myself in here just because I couldn't find a very good reference otherwise, but just sort of Christmas trees where you have this video, I have a bell in my head. And yeah, what we called sort of Christmas trees because they kind of come out like that and you have little balls on you. And then just your regular palm spinning, which we have Richard to set an example for it that today, which includes palm spinning, morphing, large numbers, and everything in between. Richard's a really good example because he uses different color balls, which sets his patterns apart, and you can sort of really vividly see them. So I really like him as an example in that realm. Yay. Does anybody have anything to say to start off our chat today that they wanted to mention? Thom?
Hi, y'all. First time in. So really great to see you all.
Okay, perfect.
Awesome.
Thom?
Yeah. I guess like picking some stuff up from that yeah, you have to excuse me, my attention is a bit less focused than last time, but it's all good, I'm still here. Yeah, that idea that you're saying, like, multi-ball can be lots of different things, and there's it used to be that when people thought about contact, they really thought about multi-ball, even more than butterfly in some cases. If you go back and look at like the old CJC videos and things, it was primarily multi-ball and very palm spinning based, or like two butterfly stuff. But like Dawn was saying there's so much space now, or the multi-ball body rolling mixing with toss. You had a good observation about that one, Dawn.
Yeah, so a lot of the first contact juggling, multi-ball palm spinning sort of took from toss juggling, so you get your basic cascades and that kind of thing. And a lot of James Ernest in his first writings is a lot of this like two-ball butterfly exchange and catches on the backs of the hands. Otherwise, Thom and I kind of call that classical contact juggling, the combination sort of the butterflies and the multi-ball, sort of everything mixed between. If you go a little bit back, you can sort of tie it to Bao Ding balls. That's some of the history, and we picked up this one from the ministry. It's sharing, right? Yeah, okay.
2007.
Okay, so fun story I just wanted to share, you guys. When I was 10 years old, I had my birthday, and my mom and I went to the mall, and she asked me what did I want, and I went into these one of decorative stores, and it was actually a set of Bao Ding balls, and it was like all I wanted. They were like $10, and I spent a lot of time at home playing with these balls. It was one of my first references to contact juggling, and I wasn't really related to juggling at all until I chipped them, of course, smashing them to pieces, actually juggling them later on. So But Baoding sort of is a reference that Michael Motion would have used to take sort of references from and that kind of thing. Does anybody else have any history stuff before we kind of go into sort of what's happening in contact juggling now?
Like, I mean, it's sort of, as we've talked about in other stuff before, that Motion was building on a lot of stuff that already existed, but just making it this kind of singular vision, having that one unified type of prop, the clear ball, that just added so much to the illusion. But I guess, like, so to start this kind of conversation off, I'm thinking something maybe controversial with people, that I think that Multiball was so popular, and then it dropped right off, and we talked about maybe isolation took its place. Maybe it was kind of pushed to the side. Is it fair to say that? Is it fair to say that there's less Multiball now, or that Multiball isn't being pushed as much? Because, yeah, I want to know what people think. I want to know if people have good examples, or if they disagree or agree with that idea that Multiball is less popular.
Like, where did it go? Like, if you look up contact juggling, it's all one ball, butterfly, body rolling stuff. And where did that focus change when we went from like the James Ernest book to now? I mean, there was that huge uptick when Piche did his anti-spin, and that sort of idea like really broke through. And then there was a huge amount of morphing with the multi-ball contact book that Drew put out. And then, you know, with the polo balls and that type of thing, where everybody all of a sudden could sort of actually do it for longer periods of time, where they could sort of morph each other because of the weight wasn't inhibiting them.
I think that was a big issue early on for people, like separating and kind of just going more towards single ball. I always thought of multi-sphere contact juggling as one of the more difficult forms, because it took a little bit more time. You had to learn a little bit more, like train a lot smaller muscles in your fingers. You weren't moving around as much. It was also the most expensive. Like, not as many people could afford as many spheres. They could only afford the one, or they didn't get very far in contact juggling, so they weren't interested in investing more. And I think there was a third note. My first multi-ball workshop was from Shifty, long time ago. Wow. Yeah. Good old Shifty. And he hadn't taught in a long time, and he had talked about an old friend of his named Marcos, I think is who it was, who all he did was multi-ball. He didn't know how to butterfly. He didn't do anything else. He just did multi-ball, and he did it even when his hands hurt. So after so long of doing multi-ball, he couldn't do it anymore. Like, he had just developed so many problems in his wrists. So I think it could also be the most damaging, maybe, form of contact juggling in that regard as well, which helps that we have polo balls now to make it easier.
Right. Does anybody else have multi-ball injuries? I think
Owen quit because he got outside, didn't he?
Yeah, that was it. I thought it was Greg, but it could be Owen. Yeah.
I feel like I have more 120 mil strain injuries than I have from multi-ball.
Okay.
Actually, I think you're the only person in here who I see rock a 120.
My insight personally, actually, for the drop-off in multi-ball and for my own practice was partially monetary, because as I got hired more for juggling and got on bigger stages, people just wanted something that they could see more. And they wanted that like dancey aspect of one ball. And I put a lot of effort into sort of making multi-ball a little dynamic and being able to move a bit with it, but just coming down to what people hired and what I ended up having to practice more and just develop act-wise as an artist.
It was nice for a walk around though.
Yeah. It's
definitely so specific for those kind of things. It loses so much when it tries to translate. And this is a thing that we talked about. It's like, it's so viewed from above traditionally. It's like, how do you translate that stuff across? And I know people have come up with different ways. Like that video I had at the start, Richard, you're like having those 4 black balls out of the 8 and using that to show off the patterns and lines is such a good visual representation of this stuff. It's the stuff which is normally only viewed by us or by in a walk around if people can get in really close. But that's a really good solution to that.
For me as a performer, the amount of time beyond 2 crystals that it took to get things smooth wasn't worth the audience return.
It's the easiest thing to practice when you're sitting around. Like, you don't even need like studio space. Multi-ball was always my thing when I'm like exhausted at the end of the juggling festival, hang out in palm spin. Or like, you know, I couldn't practice ball on head when I was grinding ball on head, like when I was touring on a bus all summer, but I could definitely practice pyramids on a bus all summer. And that's where I got all of my multi-ball grinding out.
Small spaces are a big deal. And I think that's a lot of why, you know, people from Japan have a lot of this tiny stuff. I've said sort of in other videos and stuff that your space is going to make you. If you have a big dance studio, you're going to lose these huge movements. I started learning multi-ball in France a lot, where I was just doing lines and rolling, and that's like super interesting stuff, but who has the space? And it's difficult to sort of create that dynamic stuff.
Yeah, the space consideration thing is really interesting to me because I think about like Don, what you were saying with like the kind of peaks and troughs of multi-ball. And like in the beginning, contact juggling was like a professional juggler's art. I mean, it was famously bit from a professional juggler by another professional juggler. These are people who don't give a shit about spending $100 on props, right? But they do give a shit about like whether they can perform their 8-ball acts to a house over 200 or 300 people, right?
Right. And that's the thing, they're just so tiny. I find multi-ball is just very difficult to put into an actual stage performance. Richard, I think you've done a really good job of it, actually. There's very few people who you can even see besides just the pyramid, which I think a lot of sort of just stops people there. I know for me, that's where kind of I stopped. I can do 8, but I've only performed up to 4 because the return is just not there.
I think that's worth talking a little bit about. Oh, go on. Sorry, I think I jumped over the top of everyone.
Yeah, it's okay. I've been trying, but I'm not very good with like finding a moment in between people. For me, like I've always really, really, really liked multi-ball. I probably started multi-ball pretty much at the same time that I started contact with a single ball, but I never got very far with multi-ball. I have really weak wrists. I do a huge strain on my wrist, so I can't practice for long. And I just never picked them up, to be honest. I would pick up a ball, but easy as it is to pick my multi-ball set, I don't as easily. And the other thing that I found, and it's maybe just me, but I found it. Sorry, I love you guys. You're all my friends, but I found multi-ball people a bit intimidating. They're always the crowd in the corner, not speaking to each other, kind of like little trolls. And they all tend up to be really, really geeky and really nerdy. And it gets really intimidating when you don't know them to go speak to them. So that's just for me. But yeah, if you're not part of the crowd, I think it's hard to get in.
Peach, I think you have something to say?
You should do acrylic parties.
Oh, an acrylic party.
Yeah. We should do a crystal party.
How are we going to tell who's acrylics or who's at the end of the party, though?
You'll recognize our scratches for sure.
Yeah, scratch your name into it.
Yeah, right.
You can't pick your acrylic out of 10 acrylics, really?
No, it is true. I think Kyle and I managed to switch a total of maybe 1 pair of 3-inch clear acrylics over all the years that we had all 20 or some odd of ours in a pile.
Yeah, wow. It is. I mean, Peach does throw multi-ball parties in which I've been to a few in France. And yeah, you really kind of. It's funny. I actually recognized a guy by his balls one time. I was like, you have the green balls. I know who you are. like it was, so specific. It's really interesting. I did want to reference again some of the ways that contact juggling or multi-ball has changed over the years. And one of the things is, does anybody remember this video? It's like one of my favorites.
Oh my God. Ye old moon.
Oh yeah.
I have a
Yeah.
cute story about Moon. I was in the supermarket at Berkeley Bowl one time, and I don't remember how it came up. I was just bullshitting with this checker. It was like kind of right after I moved to the Bay Area, and I was hanging out in the supermarket, and the checker was like, we were talking about something or another, and it came up that I was a circus performer, and she was like, oh, really? What do you do in the circus? And I said, well, do you know what contact juggling is? She goes, oh my God, I love contact juggling. It's my favorite. I watch videos and videos and videos, and I was like, oh, cool. Who's your favorite contact juggler? And she goes, Moon, like without missing a beat.
Yeah, it's just so beautiful. His grace, and this is so classic. So, and then there was in 2006 when Pish tried to explain multiball to the masses at the EJC in Mill Street again, with an overhead camera just like this, and then he released this in 2007. Pish, do you have anything to say about this video, or what it was like to share anti-spin in contact juggling and sort of change that? I can't see you. You're not in my screen set.
Sorry.
Okay.
That's funny with this video because when you start to understand a kind of new theory, it's new and it's not complete. So you think you understand everything, and by the way, it's full of mistake what you understood. And so here I was explaining things about squares and cross, and after a while I understood that it was full of mistake. The square is not anti-spin and things like that. I could explain more detailedly, but it's not the subject. But it's funny. So I explain things which are not right.
Right. When you're comparing spin against anti-spin, like box and cross theory. I mean, box theory exists in poi. I'm not sure how. I'm not well versed enough to say in anti-spin how it doesn't. But
can you pull up a Four Nightmares video?
Oh, Metra.
Metra, yeah.
That's my favorite. That's my
please.
favorite spin anti-spin like top-down contact juggling video, I think.
It's
Okay.
super good video.
Was coming back 2 years ago.
Does anybody have a link to that? They want to send it to me?
Just type Four Nightmares into the search bar, but you'll find it. Or Metra Four Nightmares.
Has to be it. It's pretty brutal. I love it.
Go wait.
Yeah.
That free drive video is what got me into multiball, actually.
Yeah, free drive is
Yeah,
the
free
bomb.
drive was more.
Speed.
I still use that 6-ball thing. It's like you know, where's the camera?
Yeah.
Like this thing.
Mm.
Yeah, because he also uses that square and cross.
Yeah.
Does anybody have anything to say about?
I was saying that he didn't say what is spin and anti-spin, so there is no mistake in what he shows. And it's amazingly clean. I've never seen so clean square 4-ball spinning.
Yeah,
No,
wow.
It's so much work.
What's the other name of Metra's video?
Free drive.
Free drive.
Free drive,
Yeah,
thank
can we just
you.
watch that on
What's
repeat?
the music of Crash Free Drive?
So this is 2009. This really was mind-blowing at the time, right?
It's mind-blowing now.
Yeah, it's true.
It was 1 week after Trash put the first baton video that I did.
Yeah, right.
With the same music. It was funny.
Oh yeah, I remember everybody used not everybody, but there was those 2 videos with that one tune.
And the music is from Trash, the juggler, the Diabolo juggler, French Diabolo juggler.
I love Trash. He's so nice. And
it was funny because it was the first. It was kind of kind of identity of Japanese juggling, contact juggling. No, I mean Japanese crystal ball manipulation with this speed, which was a big contrast with all the London smooth manipulation.
Sure. Yeah, Masaki is really into fast contact juggling, and Tessie, who was the guy who did the 12 ball video that where they're all different colors?
Like Najra or something like that?
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah.
Such a
trope as well, didn't it? Like I remember back in the early days of .org that it was always every country had its own style. Like Japanese had its speed, the European was the cleanliness, and the American was generally just overall super sloppy.
But playing.
Yeah, a little more maybe lighthearted.
Lighthearted enjoyment. I think Tony Duncan can be credited for influencing a lot of the Japanese multi-ball content.
I was just going to say that there's so much of Tony Duncan's like silicon ball manipulation stuff that definitely crosses over there.
Tony Duncan had a huge effect on a lot of the Japanese style, from what I understand in the history of that. I wanted to move on a little bit to Yorgos with his ghost ball work. It was just a bit later.
That's so good.
Just trying to load. Sorry guys, I'm loading and doing videos at the same time, but
God, I remember when he did like a workshop on this every day at EJC for like 2 hours or something.
And it's and Thom and I really want to just talk about like the palm, like how multi-ball is actually a balance in the palm at sort of all times, and how Yorgos really represents that so well with this ghost ball work, how he shows that balance in the multi-ball really well.
It helps break down like what I think with contact juggling in the future and how we teach it to people, we just continue to break it down into simpler and simpler ideas. And at the time, this is what we had a lot of discussions over. But I think this is one of the first videos really depicting each ball separately on its own specific path in such a concise way.
It's so beautiful.
Yeah, it's really satisfying.
We can all just like space out to that.
And of course, all the anti-spin and spin are in the Yorgos videos.
Yes.
So cleanly.
So that was sort of moving on. It moved on a little bit, and then you've got Laura on a whole other plane, taking multi-ball into this direction.
Yeah.
And I've never seen this video before. I don't know how I missed it, but when I saw it today, I was just floored, like how you can actually bring all of these multi-ball patterns that we've learned in our palms, but into your arms.
I think Teku single-handedly changed the shape of contact juggling around 2011 or 12.
Right? Like his chest ball work here.
Oh my God.
Oh, it's just so beautiful.
And he's using decaballs, which are 125 millimeters.
Yeah.
Yeah, super light, fragile balls, but they're so great for what he's trying to do and what, she's doing there.
How big are those? What size are those?
125.
How many inches is that? I'm sorry.
5.5.
5.
5.5. Okay.
It's just a little over 5, I think.
Well, 100 millimeters is 4 inch, so 125 would be 5 inch.
That's what I thought. I know Janine was advertising.
It's like 4.5. It's 4.5 inches.
Oh,
Very cool.
Oh.
No, 125 is it's 125. It's 1/4 greater than 4.
Welcome to
It's
Mass.
the imperial system. It's
Oh
the
my
imperial
God.
system. It makes no sense.
You guys are pretty heavy duty here. Very cool.
What's the metric? What's the metric 25% versus the imperial 25%?
All right,
Multi-ball nerds with their
multi-ball nerds, and that's the thing. And the thing that changed actually right after sort of Teku took that into multi-ball, and we find these paths, is that you guys found polo balls. And I want to sort of talk about size and shape of ball and how that changed palm spinning for you guys. So Can we talk about polo balls? Who has them?
I love polo balls. I've got a huge amount of time for them. I don't know if this is this working? My connection's terrible.
Yes.
Yeah, we hear you.
Cool. Because they're super light and super cheap and indestructible because they're designed to be run over by horses and everything. I think, especially for like conventions and stuff, they're just magical. But there's another thing that they give you, which is because they very slightly grate, you get this sort of rumbling. But when you've got a ball on top, you can feel the vibration of it. So when you stop, you can actually feel it like where it is. So you get this extra sense as it moves around. I love it. It just, it gives you like this extra kind of knowledge of how they're moving against each other. And yeah, for all the weird y-axis stuff that I've been trying to get on the go, they are just so perfect.
Yeah, I've had a hard time finding any polo balls. I posted a few times, but I don't know if anyone knows like the right side website for America, because I've had a hard time finding actual.
Kai should be able to tell you. He had a link on the Multiball Facebook page for a long time.
The big one went missing. There was like a big supplier that stopped shipping. So we found one in Canada, but I don't know if there's a reliable one in the States right now. But I mean, I presume there is, just finding it.
Finding one without a logo on it.
I mean, mine have logos, but they're super, like almost imperceptible.
Yeah, they're kind of like embossed. They're not like a stamp, like a bright blue.
That off.
Anyone else who doesn't have polo balls, is there anything you can't do with them? Do they inhibit you? Can you learn crystal ball contact juggling through polo balls and it transfers directly, or?
Totally.
I think the weight of them it throws me off, but then I'm really used to acrylics.
I feel like if I was learning, it would be easier to learn on acrylics and transfer to polos than learn on polos and have to get used to the weight of acrylics. I think would be a much more difficult transition.
I can't remember.
Like a chalkiness that they have about them that makes them a little bit more slippery than acrylics that I find. So it's not trade. Yeah, you almost have to put in more work to keep it together, and they're much softer, like a much softer material.
But you can learn it.
You can.
If Jordan Daniels can do all that body rolling with a 90 millimeter, you can do multi-ball with polos.
That's what that means.
Yeah, it is way smoother though.
Mm-hmm.
And do polos only come in one size? Is there many sizes you can get? Is it just the one?
I believe it's just the one. I have seen, we had one here. I don't think it was a polo ball, but it was the same material, but like 100 millimeter ball. And just this big solid ball that was incredibly unforgiving because it's that same kind of hard material, but giant. And no idea where that was from, but it was definitely the same plastic.
What size?
I can tell you where it was from.
Sorry, did someone ask a...
Sorry, I can tell you where it was from. It was from when we bought the peach ball. Their white peach was that, which was completely different than all the others.
Completely different, yeah. Did someone ask about size of the polo balls?
I was wondering if because mine are probably like 85, 85, somewhere around there.
Yeah, I think so. Mine are maybe just a little bit shy. These are 80s. I think they're about running up to an 80, mine. Okay. I can like comfortably do the kind of 3-in-1 hand, well, not right now, but the 3-in-1 hand kind of lineup stuff I can comfortably do, which I definitely can't do with 80s because they just get a bit too big or I just haven't trained it quite enough. But yeah, it's worth saying as well, like in terms of like, is it easier to learn with those? Can you learn with those and transfer it? There's nothing to be said, like, especially all the palm spinning stuff, if you want to learn separated, you can learn with stage balls or Silexes or hybrids or whatever. And it actually kind of forces good technique because you can't let them touch. So if you're doing all your showers and all this kind of like palm spinning stuff or like 3-in-1 handling, you can totally learn that stuff with grippy stage balls as well. It's just trickier. I know someone who learned all of their multi-ball with Silex because that's what they used for toss. And so like, well, I'm just going to learn multi-ball as well. That's totally possible. And then the other thing, like I see the palm spinning, like one-ball palm spinning, as lots of balance points. So that's the difference. It's the difference between balancing something very light and balancing something with a bit of inertia, with a weight to it. Same as like doing a stall on the body with a stage ball versus an acrylic. An acrylic's more likely to just kind of sit there and you can just kind of support it, whereas these require a little bit more kind of balance work on your part.
Yeah, Tony Duncan uses the silicone balls as well. And they also bounce away. Like if you're going to be on the top of a hill, I wouldn't use silicone. It really sucks to change.
These are just staged. These are just regular. These are just regular smaller stage balls.
Yeah.
So they actually they don't bounce. They're quite nice. Like I like them for the 4-ball stuff. But then if you want to spin a pyramid, it's a bit less elegant, because you have to have like some separated and some connected, so you lose that kind of symmetry. But no, they're all right. Like you can totally learn a lot of stuff with what you've got. You don't need to buy fancy acrylic straight away.
Yeah. I forgot to bring them out today, but I have those wooden ones, and I have a set of learning. They're actually doll heads from an art store, and they're about 2.5-inch acrylics, or sorry, not acrylics, wooden balls, and they're really good for that shapiness. Like, you know, in Drew's book, how he talks about how you use one like shapes instead of, you know, morphing. The wooden balls are really great for teaching that and having just some very basic multi-ball workshops.
Does anybody work?
Go ahead.
Does anybody work with the chrome spheres, the metal ones?
Oh, metal, of course.
I have done previously. I never quite got into them as much because I had very heavy ones, but Greg's got, I think, slightly lighter ones there.
Yeah, these are silver ones, are chromed 73 millimeter. These are, I think they make them 73 in China because they're the same size as putonk balls, like bocce balls. Yeah, the 73s are pretty cool.
Okay.
And they ring. They ring.
How heavy are they?
I got them in solids, and I'm not exactly sure how heavy they are. Probably close to
heavier than an acrylic. Heavy. I'm an American too, man.
Yeah, they're about a pound, I think, maybe. I'm not
heavier than an acrylic or not.
Yeah, oh yeah, heavier than acrylic. Like this one rings. Yeah. This one's hollow. It doesn't ring at all. I've got them both ways. Yeah, I got into this spheres. I'm really nothing like you guys. I thought it was pretty good till I saw the Japanese guys. He's here right now?
No, he's not with us today. No.
Oh yeah. I mean, I've been doing this since 1988, the spheres. That's when I started getting into it. But yeah, I just remember seeing the Japanese guy, and I thought I was pretty good. Then I saw him and I realized. But thanks for having me. I'm really not, I'm more of an educator for finger fitness exercises for your hands.
Yeah. I want to talk to you about that in a different on a different day and talk about, because there's a lot of finger waving and stuff going on. But yeah, I'm wondering about that. Like, who's here has stories about whose their influences were back in the day? Chris, I think you have something.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I ended up having to learn with waxed oranges at a factory in Australia because I couldn't order things off of the internet when I started contact juggling, but I was working at an orange packing plant, and when they come out of the waxer, they're like perfect for multi-ball.
That's amazing.
Only for about 15 seconds, and then the wax dries, and then you're a little screwed. But that's how I learned 3.
That's kind of amazing. There's a lot of jugglers, right, who will spin 3 in their hands, just sort of absent-mindedly, just in that sort of way. Yeah, so that's interesting. Does anybody have any experiences of like who was their biggest influence, or what was? I mean, Drew obviously with his book. Does anybody have anything? Oh, Peach.
I can jump in? Or did someone? I can't see the video super well. Did someone jump in there?
Peach had a thing up.
Yeah, you didn't talk about M from Sardinia.
I don't know about M.
The biggest influence for all the English London jugglers. I wanted to say, but no, English juggler, London manipulators. I mean, I think what's the name of the fluid druid?
Dimitri.
Dimitri gave some ball to Moon because he was not finding the sleep. He was not sleeping, and Dimitri gave him some balls and told him, make turn them and you will sleep much better. And he did it and he slept. After that he slept. So, and then he started to manipulate as a crazy guy, many hours per day, and he became for me the biggest, the best manipulator of ever.
That's amazing. So you mentioned M at the beginning and then Moon, and these are two different Italian jugglers, just so anybody...
It's different jugglers for sure.
And
arrived 10 years after, or maybe more after. And M started in a squat with in London with lots of international people. So I went to Japan and I met a guy who was practicing contact juggling. So we spent time together. And after a while, I told him, it's crazy what you do. It reminded me the tricks from M. And he says, yes, M is my master. I was living in London with him and he teach me everything. And I was practicing in front of him and then he told me, hey, but I know this trick. It's from M. And I say, yes, for sure. It was very fun.
Yes, and I've seen his work just a little bit. EJC Mill Street, he did, we did that contact juggling stage and that was such a beautiful time. The, who did he influence, M? He influenced all of the London jugglers, or was it specific?
I would be curious to know if he influenced Drew, but I think yes, he influenced maybe Jago, I'm not sure. And Ryan maybe also, I don't know. We have to ask them, but for sure me, I saw him in 1999 in Grenoble, EJC number 2 in Grenoble, France, and I watched him 45 minutes doing only different trick during 45 minutes with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 balls, and it was one of the strongest moments in my life watching Crystal Ball. One of them.
Oh, that sounds wonderful.
No, yeah, please add also.
I seem to remember Drew talking a lot about a place, I think it was called the Drome, where a lot of his era of contact jugglers would hang out. I think it may have been some club night, and M, I believe, was there, Dimitri possibly as well, and that for me, that's the old school. That's years before I even knew what contact juggling was. Maybe somebody else knows a bit more about that, but there's a lot of history in that place, I believe.
I know that when we did a talk with Nick a couple of years ago, he was talking about the Drome as being like his big catalyst from going from kind of messing around with this thing to being like, oh wait, there's something here, and there are other people here as well who are like feeding off this and like putting back into it. So yeah, definitely that was.
If you talk to Dimitri, so I've been in contact with Dimitri, and I have a half-written post with like photos and videos from the Drome that I would love to put out one day if I actually manage it. But the people from that time, yes, they really speak. And there was also an exchange in Thailand, or like these places in which were like sort of new places to go, and specifically like those full moon parties on the beaches in Thailand attracted a lot of flow spinners. So that's where like Nick Woolsey and some of those poi spinner influences really come out of that scene, the rave scene, Thailand, and then London sort of converging together, I think really influenced contact juggling back in those days.
I mean, I can jump off that because you were talking about like influences and things, because I'm just kind of like whole list of people like that. But Dimitri was a big one for me because Dimitri was the first person I think I met in real life who was so good at multiball and all of his isolation of multiball. It was so precise. I met him in Edinburgh, like at the Edinburgh Festival, maybe I've been doing 2 or 3 years of contact, and he showed me like a lot of these kind of different ways of doing things, these kind of like 4-2-3, these shower kind of variations and things, and kind of taught me a lot of that. And that was always kind of my image of multiball, of being that very precise, like everything has to be as isolated as possible and keeping everything as locked in. But it was definitely seeing Moon that then had, it's just, I don't know, that peaceful kind of fluidity that Moon has. And especially as he started using the bigger and bigger acrylics each time, that was what got me, because there's not many people who have that same image of contact, like that smooth, slow rolling of contact in the multiball to that same extent. And I think Moon really sells that really well. Like, I don't know, it really comes across in his work. And yeah, as the acrylic got bigger, it just got slower and smoother. And I think for me, they were those two like really defining things of like, it doesn't need to be huge numbers. Like 4 is intricate and good, but you can just make it look incredible. And then on the tech side, there's so many people, like the work that Ryan Mellors and Drew and Ed and you were doing, and just like there's crazy amounts of like, oh my God, you can get so technical and deep on this stuff. But I always came back to that. It can be simple, and that simplicity is kind of what contact's about. That's what makes it like really explode. It makes it look really good.
It can really exponentially like grow so fast and just be like, let's do more balls. And actually, you're right. I love that force. That like he just mentioned you, Ed, and those fish. They were like diamond fish. I really loved those, but it was like something new. But it was 4, and it followed that sort of fishy patterns. Oh, are you going to share it with us? Yeah. Oh yeah, the flipping fish. And they just like, and it's just that, and that's that kind of horizontal stuff that you're talking about as well, Thom, where like you did that 30-day challenge trying to show, like Dimitri shows his stuff really well. He's in those busker festivals, thousands of people, and he can still, he's had a huge influence on a lot of people because of his presence on stages.
And Dimitri, it's so simple that it's so easy to put those concepts across because it's very clean, lower numbers. He's not getting tangled up with the big numbers necessarily in a crowd like that. Just so like that fish thing, like putting stuff into this plane, yeah. But that idea of like replicating things in real life being something that we spoke about in the isolations like talk, but it totally fits into multiball as well. All the snakes. So like, my second controversial point is that snakes are better than pyramids. And snakes are the best part of multiball because there's so much they can do.
Pyramid is like the butterfly of multiball. It's like people want to learn multiball, they want to spin a pyramid, and you're like, no. I've been multiballing for like 10 years and I can't spin a pyramid. Not easy.
Helical snakes. Jane's talking about that in the comments about like, yeah, bringing them like when they got into that helical stuff. That was why I remember even like you guys started doing all of your body snakes and like coming into the hanger and being like, snake, cobra.
Go on, Ed.
So when I started learning multiball, it was as Drew was writing the book, and he would try out the chapters on me to see if they worked. I loved it. I got the stuff straight from the source before everyone else, and I got really good at that because of it. But because of that, Drew is my main influence. And Drew was all about, at the time, these really big numbers and morphing between different patterns. And Drew was also really about the snakes as well. I don't have hands big enough for lots and lots of balls, so I did all the morphing on just 4 balls and just completely went nuts with that. And that's how stuff like all these different shapes just came about. And so for me, Drew is multi-ball. Drew is where it's all from for me.
Yeah, that makes sense. Peach, you had your ball up.
Just wanted to say that all these snakes by Drew and Ed and the conclusion of the London influence. And then everything stopped in London. It was very, very weird how it was brusque, abrupt, sudden.
Very sudden. Yeah, that's really what happened, right? Something.
The Tories got into power.
They won't let you play with balls anymore.
I wanted to piggyback on the first talking about Drew, because I think the biggest part of my multi-ball influence, of course, is Moon. Was wonderful. It was Drew because he had the book and he had it like I just devoured as much as I could. But there's one more, and we're talking about helical snakes. We have to mention digital snakes and how little you see them. And I only remembered one person that performed, it was a busking video. He performed a digital vertical snake with his dance. Was it Nimi? I think it might have been Nimi or Nico.
I've never seen Nimi do a multi-ball.
It was, I have to find this old video. Maybe I can locate it. I used to watch it all the time, but he did like a 4 digital snake pattern through the air, and it was the craziest thing that I'd ever seen. Let's see if
I did. When you start getting the like y-axis wall plane stuff, those digital snakes are just crazy fun to do. There's so many possibilities. I did a load of stuff on Instagram with it, but I think when you start adding that like dimension, that kind of extra axis, snakes get even more exciting again, because you can take them out of that tray plane and really let them kind of move around, and all your figure of eights can suddenly get this extra dimension to it. And
he might have lost him. Can anybody still hear him? Is he gone? Oh, shoot. So that was wonderful. Does anybody else have anything about helical digital snakes that they wanted to talk about?
And I always really loved snakes and the digital thing, and I think I got into it through Drew's book and so on. But I think it's because of, as said, that pattern, that vertical plane that just makes it more obvious, and something about just, I'm a bit worried about dropping these on my laptop screen, on my laptop, but it's just something about that sort of real movement that just, it feels you've got that control in there, you've got just a different sort of pattern. And although somehow the movements are actually still quite difficult to control, it feels more accessible when you're starting off.
The digital, it feels more accessible when you're starting off. Okay, Chris?
I think there's an interesting psychological thing in just for the audience, in that your hands are underneath so often that they know you're holding them from underneath, and seeing you all of a sudden hold them from behind just gives a different like psychological effect to the audience. They don't see your hands under them, and then they believe that they're floating again for some reason. I think that change in hands is actually like really profound for people watching. It's great.
Yeah, that's such a great point.
Yeah, I want to say that I like Ryan's digital or just regular snakes have so much personality, which is something that I like about snakes, that when they kind of have a little bit of a personality versus like, you know, how you practice it. And I think that Ryan Miller's just regular snakes are really like playful looking.
He's got that great combo that comes out from here and it's like a regular snake, and then it turns into a digital snake on the way back down, and then comes back into his armpit. We've actually got a partner video coming out whenever the fucking channel eventually launches, but he throws that down and it's like front and center. It's really beautiful.
I also think some of those anti-spin concepts come into practice trying to isolate around a 4-ball lateral snake, crossing and uncrossing your arms and keeping the shape consistent as you sort of, and I think it was Stefan Singh who was like doing that with balls, and I was like, oh wait, you can keep the shape all the way around, rotating your arms by anti-spinning with the balls in your palm, you know, before you even go into that y-axis. On the x-axis, there's so much movement. You can do the elbows coming around. I don't know, I'll get my balls and try to show it, but.
Yay. So yeah, Peach?
Snakes are absolutely huge. They're essentially, they come from a line, and it's giving it a life. So that would be what would be considered a snake. But then when you make it follow a path, it becomes a train. And then you can put a helix through it. Wow, I can still do that. Amazing.
Yay!
I've just put a link in the chat to my multi-ball morphness video that I think Peach talked about last week. I think I've got a little snake section in there, perhaps. And yeah, like Jane says in the chat as well, I think it was first properly shown in isolation by Drew when he had a little snake section in there as well.
Comcast was messing with me and I dropped out for a little bit. Has anybody talked about Joseph Viot's like multi-ball clowning act yet?
No, that is so good, right? Can we just share the snakes video that we've got? And then I love we can share that one. I'll load it up after.
Is this the one with the cat in the end?
I don't know, but we're just showing helical snakes here just for the posterity.
Yeah, but I believe there's a very special, unique helical snake in the end of this video, if I recall correctly.
Do you have anything to say about this, Ed?
I think there's you can see the huge influence in this by Drew and his shapes and moving them around through space, and a massive influence from Peach as well. Meeting Peach a few times taught me an awful lot of tricks.
That's cool.
Yay.
I haven't watched this in like at least 5 years.
Yeah, but it shows a lot. I love that concept by Drew of just moving shapes and moving them around. Like, I mean, he just did dead snakes with me, and I think I've used that like the entire time I've learned multi-ball. I'm not to say I'm a good multi-ball person, but that stuff is just so rich. You can explore it forever. Okay, Richard, you wanted to share Joseph's clowning. That was wonderful.
I wanted to talk about the snake. Moon did snake with 3 balls. It was his. I mean, in all his video, he shows the 3 balls snake, which was very clean and very smooth. And I work a lot of with 2 ball snakes, and I love it also. And I use a lot of anti-spin and spin. I mean, stuff like like that. I don't know if you can see, but the snake can grab and can stop and isolate, and so you can change the head of the snake very easily also with 2 balls, and it's very smooth, and it's in the 3 dimension also.
Guys, this has been super awesome. I'm going to have to sign out.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, see you on the next one.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.
Bye. Okay, so I have this, I love that you brought this up. Richard, thank you. This is one of my favorite pieces, and I
just pulled out too. You can skip to 125 or so for the multi-ball part.
Okay. 125.
And for those of you who aren't familiar with this act, it's like one of his hands is a little person, and it's getting all of these tricks.
On the music, please.
You
So good.
No, don't put it, but I say I.
Oh,
it's
yeah,
just
thank you.
precise, but it's on the.
Yeah, the music's difficult to, but the character that his two fingers have is incredible. This is one of his first acts as well, like that Joseph ever did, and it came out with so much creativity and thought that was really a shock. I think a lot of people had never seen anything that he'd done before.
He's incredible. He did this for anybody else who I guess wasn't at Mill Street. He was the first act in the first open stage of the EJC in Ireland in 2014, I think. And he came out and did a boogang act with two bananas that was like insane. And it was all like kind of liquid dance and like curvature like tricks, and it's basically like all the boogang stuff, but like with the he sold it as like that slightly now played out like trunk shtick where like you walk out with the trunk and like then the trunk gets stuck and you do like the suitcase isolation and you walk around it and you put it down and you open it up and it's a contact ball and the contact ball floats and is all non-physicsy, right? But in this case, he like used the overused trope, and then and everybody's like, oh, he's the shit hot new contact juggler. And instead of pulling out an acrylic, he just pulled out these two bananas and did a whole dance act with these two bananas and brought the house down.
Banana shigi, like to
Absolutely.
the max. Oh, that's amazing. Is there any other like creative uses of multi-ball? Because a lot of multi-ball is this like heavy technical conversation of like shapes and technique, but like Joseph really adds a lot of creativity. Does anybody have any references or anything how to talk about performing or sharing personality or that kind of thing in their?
I would throw in I don't think there's any video out there, but Joseph's piece really reminds me of what Camille was doing, who was kind of in and out last time. He did a really lovely clown-based yes. Ed's doing it now. The snail. I love that so much. Like Camille did a whole routine of just dumb tricks like that and presented them in this very straight, very serious way. And it's so good. And yeah, it was, I think in Berlin he showed that and it just killed everyone there. It's so good.
Yay. I love it. There's a lot of squids. Like a lot of my beginner tutorials all about the squids and the fishes and all of that kind of stuff. And it really can come through with your snakes and fish and these different shapes all of a sudden then become creatures. And Poip Fiction by Ferret. I don't remember that. Does anybody else?
I remember at some convention or other, I think probably in France, I watched.
You mean Furet? Sorry.
Okay,
it's the chat conversation that Jane's trying to say something.
I seem to remember at a convention in France watching Marco Paoletti do stuff with two pyramids rolling around the floor, rolling over with lots of pyramid stuff.
He's got a DVD with play juggling with a lot of that stuff, him in an aquarium, doing those big like rolls and things with the steps. That's really worth a watch. Yeah, big movement stuff. And he had my favorite.
I think like Multiball contact stuff is the one who's really responsible for polo balls getting so widespread as well. I can't remember who the original pioneer was, but I remember Marco was really pushing them and sort of getting hold of them from Argentina and selling them on for a lot of people.
Like do a snake.
Marco also, I feel, did one of the first big top of the head videos. I don't think there was much top of the head stuff out there, but then he had a whole thing of him like in his apartment and walking down the stairs and all that kind of stuff. And then doing like 8-ball, 2 pyramids with the ball on the head. And I think that's when a lot of contact jugglers, especially people who weren't going to the EJC, were like, ooh, that's a thing. There's something here before it just exploded in popularity.
Who was that?
Marco Paoletti.
I didn't know Marco Paoletti did multi-ball.
He's a dude. He does everything.
Yeah, no kidding.
I just wanted to remember, like, a couple of weeks ago, before, you know, everything happened, Thom came to visit me. We were reading, and we wrote this one thing about the old school, this one roll. I don't know if anybody's tried it, but it's like in beginner contact book, where you roll it from here and put it on the stack and like combine the body rolling palm spinning thing. And like, that's what you're talking about with Marco Paoletti doing that kind of stuff, right? Because it's easier with like your balls that you have there, Thom.
No, I was talking about Marco rolling around on the floor and
Himself.
rolling over a pyramid and under it and doing curls.
Yeah, he's very, very big curls, but mixing big curls in with more kind of gymnastic stuff as well. Yeah, it's stuff which, with the acrylics, I don't see many people quite with that range of movement, but it totally fits in.
I think I remember a very, very old video from like one of the first CJCs. It might have been Peach doing some of that sort of stuff as well.
Okay.
Curls with pyramids.
I have one question, because everybody hears like, this is difficult to perform, it doesn't make any money, it's expensive, it's difficult to do. Why are you doing it?
Because of love. What do we do?
No, but
Why do we do things other than love?
But what is it about multi-ball that we love? Because we've talked about how there's difficulties with it, and so I'm just curious, like there's a love for it. Like Peach, you love multi-ball. Like there's people, Richard, you love multi-ball. These are your mainstays. These are things that you present quite often. You've worked really hard at them, and it's just not my space. So I'm curious, what does multi-ball give you?
It's cool looking.
It's
like
cool.
I used to watch a bunch of videos of, you know, like, I mean, I don't remember who, definitely Thom and definitely some others, where like all the multi-ball videos were like people doing morphing, and then like they'd like build this whole morphing thing, and then it was like watching an Andre act. It would be like nobody moves for like half a minute, and then something kind of shifts, and then like it's something else, and then nobody moves for another minute, and then somebody says some swear words, and then all the balls go flying opposite directions at the same time. And I was like, this doesn't look fun. And then the first time Murdoch and me hung out in person, I was talking like this. I was like, oh yeah, I think one ball is so cool. I don't get the whole thing with multi-ball because it seems so slow and painstaking and not fun. And he was like, yeah, that's what somebody told me until I saw it, but watch this. And he like threw me a little like 4, 6, 8 ball routine, and I was like, okay. And then I got 4 acrylics, and I took them on tour, on that like tour where I was on like buses and boats for like a month or 2. And then I, you know, after carrying 4 acrylics around for a year, then I could kind of like, I could do a pyramid. And then once you can do a pyramid, the nice thing about multi-ball is that like, once you can do stuff in one hand, it pretty much like copies to the other hand for the most part, unless you're totally, totally lazy. And then like, once you can do 3 in both hands, then you can do 6. And once you can do pyramids in both hands, then it's like on, you know.
There was a video, it's not online anymore. I'm not entirely sure where it's gone, from one of our Edinburgh juggling meetups, where we spent 5 hours between 2 different juggling clubs trying to learn the cube, of just putting the 8 balls together to make a cube. And then when it happens, the entire room going, the cube! And so for a long time in Edinburgh, whenever anyone had multi-ball anywhere near them, it was just a cube. And yeah, so that was exactly that feeling of very tentatively putting something together and then launching it all at the last second.
Cubes are so dodgy, it's the worst.
On the question of how, like, why we do something that very little people do, or something that's really hard to do, I think therein in itself for me, Richard talked a little bit about it, that it just looks really, really cool, and it feels really good to do. But I think a big part of it, like what pushed me through it, was I figured out a move that wasn't in Drew's book, and I had to master it. But it was this one, the 4-ball chase. Like, he didn't list how to do it, so I really wanted to learn how to figure it out. But additionally, no one else did it, really. I mean, Richard was doing it, a few other people were also doing it. I guess I have a personality that doesn't like to go with the crowd. As niche as contact juggling is, multi-ball seemed even more niche. And so it just kind of, it felt like a really fun world to explore, and at that time help contribute to and expand, since, you know, there was a lot of really exciting information coming out around that time. We were doing the collaboration videos, and people were bringing in more concepts, and a lot more people were getting the multi-ball book. I think that was a really, really helpful resource. And then as we started making more videos, you know, the world expands and people come up with new ideas. So I'm really glad that I put the work in early on to kind of see where it's going now. It's kind of neat.
Yay. Does anybody have anything to say? Because I have a question after that. Okay, first we'll go there. Yeah.
For me, when I started out, multi-ball was kind of underground. Everything was all about doing the one ball. And then you would hear about the people from the generation before, Drew, Peach, who would do all this amazing stuff with multi-ball, but you'd never see it because they didn't like to contact juggle in public or show off so much. And then at the end of the night, when everybody was knackered, everybody was pissed, everybody would end up sitting in a circle and just entranced by these people just moving 3 or 4 balls around. And there was a huge sort of kudos sort of attached with that, and it just really, really spread for me that way. It got me hooked. I think It was just like Greg said, the nicheness of it, the very sort of, oh, I don't usually see this is so not what I'm used to doing, but it looks fun.
Yay, those late night after midnight contact juggling EJC, like, yeah. Everybody's like, oh yeah, that's where it's at.
So I started carrying 2 sets of acrylics around for the time that I was super gung-ho about doing that, because I'd carry 8 acrylics with the rest of my props in a bag around everywhere, and then I'd like sit down to practice 8, and like 3 people would come up and grab 2, be like, okay. And so I started carrying 2 sets around so that, like, you know, I could sit down and just like dump like close to 20 acrylics on the floor, and then like I only want to play with 8, but unless I put down 16, I'm not going to get to play with 8.
Oh, funny. That's amazing. Peach, did you have something? Oh, we don't hear you yet.
What is strong in multi-ball is, in my opinion, the morphing. The morphing means that, I know that you know what is morphing, but you have one shape which is moving or not, but it's better if it's moving, like the diamond, and then you scrambled it. Nothing understand anything, and no one understand anything, and then you have a new shape, and then you morph, no one understand nothing, and it's a new shape. And this kind of understanding, not understanding of the shape is very graphical, and is this transformation, this is, in my opinion, very powerful.
Yes, it's a reveal. It's like magic, right? Where you're like, I'm going to hide. There we go. You know, it's a fundamental psychological phenomenon of there's a name for this. Anyway,
and breach.
Yeah, like there's good stuff around this with illusions and things, how the human brain is kind of hardwired to see patterns, and there's this deep satisfaction and relief when a pattern appears. So we're really like chasing that. I saw some stuff that traced it back to like, because we've been prey for a lot of our existence, and when we recognize a predator, I don't know how true that stuff is, but that feeling of out of this misunderstanding, out of this chaos, finding a pattern and seeing something that shapes, that's a thing that really clicks. And you can have that with multi-ball so nicely, because you can just create something and hang it in space, and it's there. It's a solid thing.
Anybody else about that? Oh, I've forgotten my question.
I can, if you're thinking about that, just that idea of like the one shape thing, thinking about like what people interpret. One of the reasons why I really like multi-ball is because because of the amount of control you have over these things in space and the manipulation you can have. But that idea of thinking of it as one thing is so huge to me. Like, if it's a line, then really trying to keep that wherever it's going and not breaking that illusion. And yeah, so I have the difference between, like, the two outside balls are connected, and so they're kind of pulling against each other, there's tension, or one's pushing the other, or they can have like some kind of, like the snakes have more of a flow one into the next, but always coming back to that idea of what can I do with this one shape, whether it's manipulating it or whether it's just keeping it true to itself as it moves around. Like, that's one of the things that I really like about Multiball. You just have that minute detail control over it. It's really satisfying to be able to put that stuff across.
I'd like to bring up something that you've no, we're not. Okay.
Hey.
I'd like to bring up something that you did actually way back in the day. I think it was 2010 in Edinburgh. We made that Edinburgh massive video, and you had those three there's something about those yellow juggling balls that I still have. And you were just there for probably an hour, just experimenting with these different shapes of the ball. And for me, that was one of the most inspiring multi-ball bits I think I'd ever seen, because it was just a complete break from everything that I've seen in the past.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Like, going back into that 30-day challenge I did of this y-axis thing. It's like, okay, let's do the Tetris shapes, but like, how can we manipulate each of them, and what do we have to sacrifice to be able to hold like these good Tetris shapes in this y-axis? And it's actually kind of tricky, but it led to a whole load of new stuff. Like those digital snakes you can work out as just being morphing forms of this like very simple patterns. And yeah, when you sit down and just go like, okay, let's extrapolate. It's not something that I do very often. It's weird, 'cause it's not something I do very often with rolling, or with, if I'm doing more dance isolation stuff, I'm more free to just let myself kind of explore space. But with multi-ball, it's like, okay, let's think about this shape, and let's think about manipulating a shape, and like go to all the lengths that we can. Yeah, it's weird that multi-ball kind of, that's where that obsessiveness comes in.
Are we not just a stubborn bunch of people? Okay, so guys, this is about an hour and 15 minutes. It's usually about the time where I'm going to wrap up. So I'm going to wrap this up with final thoughts on this for now, and then the room is open to talk openly from then on. Does anybody have anything they want to finish this with, or where we're going with multi-ball, or any thoughts on the future, or how to make it a cohesive part of contact juggling again?
Does everybody in here know the multi-ballers toast?
No?
Multi-ball will never die.
Bri and Riel, do you guys have drinks handy, like a couple of like cans of something, or like a couple of beers, either open or closed or whatever? No, they have to be like the same drink. Like ideally, like a 12-ounce bottle of beer or soda or something is the best.
Bri's getting something right now.
Or a couple of cans of something. Or maybe I can. I wonder if it's faster for me to snipe.
We need two of them?
Yeah, you need two of them, because you're both at a party and you're drinking, you're in the bar tent or whatever, and you're both drinking beers. Okay, yeah, so Kyle Johnson taught me this. What you do is you clink them together like you're gonna toast, but you hold them against each other. And then you do 2 rotations like a ratchet.
Fuck, we should not have opened these.
No, we got this. We're only gonna spill it everywhere.
There, that's the multi-ball.
I like this.
We got this.
Cheers.
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 Complicated, isn't that multi-ball in a nutshell?
If we weren't the type to overcomplicate things, we would not be jugglers.
Exactly. Peesh, you had a thing. No, that wasn't a ball up. Okay. So guys, I want to thank you. Thom, do you have any final words today before we wrap up the recorded version?
No, thank you for jumping in on top of this. Hopefully I am less sick next week, so we'll be back going on.
Yay. Thanks for everyone for coming, and this is the end of the recorded session. Have a great day.
Bye.
Happy Mother's Day.
Thank you all.